All right, Prime Minister Modi has expressed grief over the loss of lives in the mining accident in China's Shaanxi province. In a post on X, the Prime Minister conveyed condolences to Chinese President Xi Jinping and the people of China on behalf of the people of India. Prime Minister Modi said he hopes the bereaved families find strength in this difficult time and also prayed for the early and safe recovery of those who are still missing after the accident. Ajay Jandyal, my colleague, joins us on the broadcast to talk more about this. Ajay, this is, of course, a big tragedy. Almost 100 people are reportedly dead.
Yes, definitely it's a very tragic incident which has taken place over there after a mine basically explosion took place in China, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed grief over the loss of lives in the mining incident in China, and he clearly says that the people of China, on behalf of India, on behalf of the people of India, PM Modi has said, he hopes the bereaved families find strength in this difficult time, and also pray for the early and safe recovery of the people, those who are still missing. So definitely it's a painful moment, and India also paid condolences, in this tough time of the people of China.
All right, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in India on his first official visit, and the timing could not be more significant. This is the first high-level U.S. visit to India since the West Asia crisis sent shockwaves through global oil markets and raised fears over energy supply disruptions. Rubio's meetings with Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar are being seen as a major reset moment for the India-US ties after recent trade tensions. Energy security is at the heart of these talks, with Washington pushing for a bigger role in India's oil and gas imports as instability in the Strait of Hormuz threatens global supplies. The visit also reinforces a strategic cooperation on defense, trade and the Indo-Pacific, with both sides signaling that the India-US partnership remains central to global stability. The United States' Secretary of State also extended a personal invitation from US President Donald Trump for the Prime Minister to visit the White House in the near future. Listen in to some key statements by Marco Rubio during this high-profile visit.
Anchoring that is the relationship between the President and the Prime Minister. It's a personal relationship that dates back to the first administration when the President had a chance to visit here, and it has carried over into this second administration, and you can just see the connection between them, and I think that's incredibly important. It is. The connection between leaders is incredibly important. These are two very serious leaders that are focused not just on the short term, but on the long term. And so I think that that is important to note, because it's a key part of the foundation of the relationship between our countries. We've expanded commercial ties now with more than $20 billion in investments. $20 billion in investments from Indian companies in the United States. We've deepened a security partnership through military exercises in the Indo-Pacific. And of course, as part of that, we recognize that an orderly and a secure consular system is vital to solidifying this important relationship. In this visit, to reaffirm those ties, to build upon them, and we think in the months ahead we're going to have even more exciting and new announcements to make about the development and the strengthening of the relationship between the two countries, and all of you will be at the forefront of that.
All right, we're going to talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show at this point in time is Mr. Matthew Vedam, journalist and author. He joins us all the way from Washington, D.C. Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former diplomat, with us on the program as well. Major General A.K. Sivach, defense expert, joins us on the show as well. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapad, managing editor of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the program as well. Thank you, everyone, for taking out the time and being here. Professor Nalapad, your analysis of why Marco Rubio is here. He's talked about cooperation. He's talked about our past with the Americans and India's past with Donald Trump as well. Ever since he came to power for the first time in 2016, he's talked about his visit to Ahmedabad, which was, of course, right before COVID-19 hit. But the fact of the matter is, at this point in time, there is a lot of strain on the Indian economy. Perhaps what India expects from Donald Trump and Marco Rubio is to figure out how this energy crisis that India is seething under can be somehow mitigated by American efforts.
Yeah, allow me to digress a bit in the beginning. And now, to understand why Marco Rubio went to Kolkata to Nirmal Hriday, where the first hospice set up by Mother Teresa, now of course Saint Teresa. She was born in Albania. Her name was Agnes Gongsa Bodasiu, and later on she trained and became an Indian citizen. Now that was the first hospice to be set up by her. But today, Mother Teresa's hospices are all across the world. They're there in Europe, they're there in the United States, Africa, South America, you name it. And whom do we find there? We find there people who have been taken off the streets, people who have not at the waiting room, not in the platform, but who have entered the train leading to death. And the idea is to make that journey as comforting for them as possible. You see people, for example, who are too weak to eat food on their own. So they have to be fed by the sisters, and the sisters feed them some, very watery kind of food which they feel they can digest. It's a very amazing spectacle, and anyone who has been to Nirmal Hriday cannot fail to be basically really impressed by that. So there's no question that, I can understand why Marco Rubio went there. I'm sure that the visit to Nirmal Hriday would have touched him as much as it touched almost everybody who has gone there. And also, I'd like to say, it shows that we are a country where all religions are free to practice, whether you're a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim, you're free to practice your faith. There's no question about it. And I think the very fact that Nirmal Hriday has spread across the world, by an Indian citizen, Saint Teresa, it speaks for itself. Now, I'd like to also now go back to the visit. And I think the meeting with Prime Minister Modi was incredibly important, but the Prime Minister would have given him the complete rundown as to what India expects, to what India needs, and what the United States needs to do to meet those expectations. And I think that's one reason why Marco Rubio realized that something has to be done, and he handed that personal letter. And I'm sure the Prime Minister welcomed a visit to Washington, the White House, to meet his old friend, President Donald Trump. But and of course, probably Trump will come for the G20 Leaders Summit later in Delhi. Now, this was the Foreign Minister Summit and hosted by our External Affairs Minister Jaishankar and the Quad. In fact, the Quad had been put in a deep freeze by Donald Trump. It seems to have been revived, because otherwise he would not have allowed Rubio to come all the way to India to attend a meeting of the Quad foreign minister. So there's every likelihood that at some later stage, you are going to have the full Quad meeting and all the leaders of the Quad, because the Quad is extremely important, if I may say so. It's the basic security construct for a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, to use the Prime Minister's words. So the meeting of the Quad foreign ministers is going to be very, very important. And I'm sure that Minister Jaishankar, guided by Prime Minister Modi, will ensure that there is an agreed statement at the end of that. And that agreed statement will stress on the importance of keeping the Indo-Pacific free, open, and inclusive, and also in protecting and preserving democracy, and in protecting and preserving human lives and livelihoods from what is now happening, which is a loss of livelihoods and consequently a loss of lives because of this terrible disruption that has been caused by this Iran situation. And the expectation in India is that that situation is not going to be worsened by a fresh attack, this time on Cuba. You already got the Strait of Hormuz closed. What happens if we get the Panama Canal closed? Because Cuba has also got enough missiles, etc., to do that. So I think the Quad meeting will be very important. I think Marco Rubio will find that just as we found the other NATO partners in the meeting of NATO very unenthusiastic about joining the US in this war with Iran, you're going to find the other Quad leaders, the External Affairs Minister of India, Penny Wong of Australia, the External Affairs Foreign Minister of Japan, very unenthusiastic, in fact, completely opposed to their countries joining any war concerning Iran. So I think that is one point that's going to be there. And the fear is, frankly, that for some things may get completely out of control by even the Panama Canal being affected and global commerce being affected more than it already is. So I think what we expect from Rubio is to convey faithfully the message sent to him by the Quad leadership of foreign ministers and, of course, most importantly, by Prime Minister Modi, who is a champion of the Global South. And the Global South is, very honestly, very important. And from that point of view, Prime Minister Modi has always spoken, not just for India, but for the Global South. And I do hope that Secretary of State Rubio will get the message very clearly from the Prime Minister, from the other Quad leaders, that essentially, frankly, they expect a situation where once again flows of oil and flows of commerce are completely normalized, and not disrupted so severely as they are during this period. Thank you very much.
You're quite right, sir. Matthew, what's your opinion of why Marco Rubio is here? He obviously understands the importance of the India-US friendship, but there's also been a lot of, damage done to the relationship between the two in the recent past as a result of, number one, the tariff situation between India and the Trump administration, and of course, Trump's posts on X calling India a hellhole have not really gone down well. Not only with the Indian polity, but the people as well. Do you think Marco Rubio is here to, figure some sort of a reconciliation out?
Clearly, Marco Rubio is visiting India to perform damage control. And I was just going to say more or less exactly what you said without you even prompting me. So we are of the same mind on that issue, apparently. The Trump administration recognizes that the president's aggressive use of tariffs have damaged the relationship. Yes. That it has frayed since his second presidency began in January of last year. And then there are the rhetorical missteps. He didn't technically call India a hellhole. He retweeted a conservative talk radio host's a transcript of his show in which he called India a hellhole. It was in the context of the birthright citizenship issue. And then he took it down, which the president doesn't normally do. He normally doesn't admit that he's done anything wrong. So that's the closest thing you're ever going to get to an apology from Donald Trump on the issue. But clearly Rubio is there to try to repair the damage that has been done to the U.S.-India relationship. And he's also hoping to promote American energy, because India has had its supply of oil curtailed because it imports, I think, something like 50% of its crude oil through it passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and that oil is not getting to India right now, which is causing oil prices to rise rather dramatically. And this is hitting Indian consumers and businesses hard, from what I understand. So he wants India to start buying as much energy as they're willing to buy from the United States, which is, in recent years, has become the world's foremost producer of crude oil. So he's trying to repair a damaged relationship, and he's trying to lay the foundation for an expansion of trade, despite the damage that tariffs have done to the relationship and to the Indian economy.
You're quite right, Matthew. Ambassador Mukherjee, why do you think Marco Rubio is here? And of course, he also went to Calcutta first, there's also a conversation he's had with the government about FCRA licenses for a number of NGOs in the country as well. So it's a visit which is laden with a number of tangents.
Well, the visit to the missionaries of charity, I agree with Professor Madhav Nalapat, actually demonstrates India's strong syncretic culture, a beautiful fabric of different religions and ethnicities woven together in the beauty of this 1.4 billion, 5,000 year civilization. I think that was a great idea. I'm not so sure whether it was a great idea to visit the Victoria Memorial, which contains all the remnants of colonialism, including a piano apparently, which was played by Queen Victoria. But then, we Bengalis are attached to some of these post-colonial relics. And he maybe went there at the suggestion of his Bengali host, I have no idea. But I don't think it was a great idea to go to the Victoria Memorial. But yes, for Mother Teresa, I agree with Professor Nalapat. I also believe that he has to understand, Marco Rubio, that Mother Teresa came here as a missionary, but became an Indian in thought, in mind, in soul. She wrote in her memoirs that for 15 years she had lost God. She didn't know whether she was a believer. Her memoirs are amazing. I've read them. So I agree with Professor Nalapat. Marco Rubio's presence here demonstrates a very belated effort at damage control after putting this so-called field marshal in the middle of the game, as if he comes from some huge country with huge GDP, bursting at the seams with money. Basically, the Trump administration miscalculated badly on the India-US relationship and tried to play petty politics by putting Pakistan in the middle. That doesn't work with us. And hopefully, Marco Rubio, who seems to be a sensible guy, has understood that. He's had good conversations with the PM apparently, and he is attending the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, which means again, hello, a wake-up call to Trump and his administration that Quad matters, a rule-based order in Indo-Pacific matters, that he just can't go around breaking up the international order where it suits him. You very rightly pointed out, somebody rightly pointed out, that going after Cuba, again, may not be such a great idea because Cuba has been a thorn in the flesh of the United States ever since Fidel Castro came to power. It's not so, and it almost resulted in a nuclear exchange in the time of President Kennedy. So nobody is listening to me in US, but for what it is worth, I would urge great caution on Cuba when they've already caused such havoc in the Middle East by threatening to destroy a 5,000-year civilization overnight. I was there when this threat was made. I was here on NewsX when that threat was made. Finally, I believe that the invite to Washington is welcome, but our president, our prime minister will visit Washington when the conditions are good for India, when he will not be embarrassed, when, for instance, it shouldn't be that he invites PM to Washington and suddenly out of the blue, like the Phantom or a genie, you have the field marshal popping out from the corner of the room. No. That's not the way to deal with PM Modi. You have to deal with PM Modi the way you dealt with the Chinese premier and with the Chinese. We are not to be taken lightly. A visit to Washington is most welcome. It has to be an India standalone visit with everything put in the way both sides like, not some kind of so-called fake reconciliation or whatever. That is a no-no. And finally, I do hope that after the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, there will be an actual Quad meeting and that it dawns upon President Trump that it is not helpful to United States and the State Department to systematically destroy its strategic partnerships and go after its friends while pushing up its enemies and those who are the prime sponsors of terrorism, including against white, Western, and American interests. Thank you, Dilip.
You're absolutely right, ma'am. General Simach, what about the situation in West Asia? India has always encouraged the Americans to practice the path of peace. Marco Rubio said, while speaking to the media, that there are conversations going on between Iran and the United States at the present moment as well. But every day, General Sivach, is a loss of millions and millions of dollars and millions and barrels of crude oil, which could have kept the problem that India is witnessing right now at bay. So India has to be clear when it comes to speaking with Marco Rubio as well, that it is in their interest, it is in our interest that this war stop.
Absolutely. No denying the fact, Vinay, that war has completely destroyed the economy of the world. In fact, food, fuel, fertilizer rates have now skyrocketed. And everyone say, what is the outcome of what has happened in West Asia? The outcome is one, the Strait of Hormuz, which was free and open, as on today it is blocked not by Iran only, but also naval blockade and by the America. And there is no denying the fact that India has been always telling there is no solution which can be found out in a battlefield. That in case there is a problem, dialogue and diplomacy can only find a solution on a negotiating table. I think we have been very, very clear on this issue, and Prime Minister Modi has been always articulating this idea, even in Russia-Ukraine war, and also what's happening now in West Asia. Now, having said that, the situation is very critical in West Asia. One does not know whether there will be another strike by the US on Iran. And unfortunately, if it takes place, then you will find it energy rates will be skyrocketed. And in case the Iran will be hit, obviously Iran will hit back on all the military bases of US in Middle East. Also, their energy sector, their desalination point, and also the tourism will go for a toss, and certain companies which are there like Microsoft as well as Apple, their headquarters are in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they will be also completely destroyed. So therefore the good sense should prevail and some sort of solution should come out in the negotiations which are taking place. There are back channel diplomacy is taking place. Possibly Egypt is also involved, in Saudis are also involved, Qatar is involved, Pakistan, which is more of a messenger. But some solution has to be found out in case this war again erupts. It will be a disaster for the whole world. Now, as far as this meeting concerned, I think one very important thing is that the defense cooperation with India and now US is there, that's very important. Remember, there is a trade between India and US about $130 billion. And India export almost $90 billion. And there is a trade surplus as far as India is concerned about $50 billion. And that's why the US is very keen that India must buy the energy and especially the oil, crude oil, and not only from US, also from Venezuela, because that has the largest reservoir of the oil, almost about 3.3 billion barrels. So the point today is that US must understand having good relation with India is a two-way traffic. It can't have a tariff of 50% on its friend and then trying to be friendly with us. I think US has now realized it. The relation should now come onto the track. And India will like to buy the oil from wherever we can get it at a lower cost. And we have already diversified from 24 entities to 41, and we are further going to the problem is basically LNG and LPG are almost about 50 to 60% of our requirement was coming through Strait of Hormuz, which is now blocked. I think that is a cause of concern. I think India is working on that. And there is also defense cooperation, which we are now talking about, India and US, where there can be joint development and co-production of this thing. There will be a talk about semiconductor, artificial intelligence, chips, and quantum computing. That's very important. India is telling that there should be a transfer of technology. And the engine
All right, sir.
G404
So we have some
is
breaking
the
news also coming in. Tommy Pigott, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State, has said that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi and extended an invitation from President Donald Trump for Prime Minister Modi to visit the White House. Pigott said that the two leaders discussed the current situation in the Middle East, during which Marco Rubio stressed that the United States will not allow Iran to hold the global energy market hostage. He also said American energy exports could help diversify India's energy supply. He further said that both sides agreed to deepen trade and defense cooperation and speed up collaboration in critical and emerging technologies, highlighting the growing strategic partnership between India and the United States. Well, this is obviously true, Ambassador Mukherjee, that India must diversify its energy needs. But you know, buying oil from Venezuela and the United States facilitating it, what kind of a quandary does it put us if it does in any way, ma'am?
The Venezuelan oil is heavy oil, which we can easily refine in our refineries, and we will re-export it if required. It's perfectly legal. The US offering us energy supplies is very kind of them. The time distance is very long, and it's not going to bail us out immediately. Thirdly, Marco Rubio seems to be completely oblivious to the fact that if the entire world switches to alternative energy supplies, as they would have to, it will completely destroy the economy of staunch American allies in the Middle East, including Qatar and UAE. Do they have no understanding of the kind of damage that it will do to the economies of UAE and Qatar, where, for instance, we have millions of Indians there working on the economy? So I'm sorry, these kind of makeshift second thought measures, very kind of you, United States. We will diversify. We are diversifying. We have no alternative. We have 1.4 billion people here. We are the world's fastest growing economy. Nobody can stop us. But the issue is, what will happen to UAE? What will happen to Qatar? Yes, we will diversify. We will buy American oil. We will refine Venezuelan crude and sell it in the market. We are, after all, a smart and savvy nation. We know how to handle our problems. We will buy Russian oil, which is not sanctioned. Definitely. But the question is, United States, would you please have the Straits of Hormuz unblocked through an arrangement with Iran so that your allies are saved? Otherwise, to quote Henry Kissinger,
All right. All right, ma'am. All right. We've run out of time. I appreciate your thoughts, ma'am. And I appreciate everybody who joined. And thank you so much. We've completely run out of time. All right. Some more breaking news coming in. As per reports, Iran has reached a memorandum of understanding through Pakistani mediation, raising hopes of a possible breakthrough in the ongoing regional conflict. The reported framework is set to include an end to the war, lifting of the siege, reopening of the crucial Strait of Hormuz, and a full withdrawal of U.S. forces from the conflict zone. According to reports, nuclear issues have been deliberately kept out of the current MOU for now. The framework reportedly states that if the agreement takes effect, nuclear negotiations between the sides would begin 30 days later. Iran has also reportedly made it clear that it will not make any additional concessions beyond what is already mentioned in the MOU. Pakistan is being credited in reports for helping broker the understanding after months of tensions in the region. However, there is still no official confirmation from Washington, and attention is now focused on whether the United States will agree to the proposed framework or not. Ajay Chandyal, my colleague, joins us on the broadcast. Ajay, if a deal has been brokered, it's a very, very good thing. If Pakistan has done it, that's also okay. But the nuclear question will still hang in the balance.
You rightly said, because this memorandum what they have designed is something which definitely is going to be a major hurdle for the U.S. because U.S. is not going to agree till the issue of the nuclear is not solved. So the MOU which covers end of war, lifting of stays, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, full withdrawal of U.S. forces from the war zone, These are the minor things which I don't think that there will be a major issue between the two. But special issue is the nuclear issue, and that is deliberately left out from this MOU. That clearly indicates that Iran also wants this conflict to go on, because Iran knows that if they will agree on this stop nuclear engagement, then definitely this is going to make them very troubling for the coming future.
Ajay, thank you for joining us. We'll take a short break on that note. Be right back.